Welcome to the fifth of 7 videos from the Roman Army lecture on social origins and recruitment. In this video, I want to say a little bit about promotion and the various ranks, at least within the early and high imperial era. Get rid of my face. Okay, so we have our recruits. Okay, they've now become Bob the Recruit is now no longer a Tiro. He's sworn the sacramentum, and he is now in the army. Now, there are all sorts of possibilities. There was regular salaries. We'll come back to pay many moons from now. There are exemptions and things. There were those who would become, for part of their career, immunes, who would be exempt from harsher stuff if they have certain skills and they found themselves holding some of these positions. Being an immunis would mean possibly greater salary, maybe some exemptions from certain things that are less pleasant, and it seems to have been a slightly more honorable position. Some things that seem to have fallen under this category include the antesignani, a foot soldier who stood in front of the standards. The standards are the flags, sort of the banners. Each unit had its own standard. The legion have an eagle, the emperor, etc. Sort of used as a something to rally around, and also a means of communicating, but it also came to have these other meanings. There was a religious connotation, and even connected with the funds, like a bank for soldiers. But anyway, come back to those at another point. So also the postignani, so foot soldiers who stood after the standards. So these are people, prominent ones in and around the standards. Ballistari, artillerymen, from ballista, which is a special kind of siege engine. Signum is the standard itself. Aquilifer is the eagle bearer. Signifer is the person who holds the standard, the signum, for each 2 cohorts. Again, the money deposit there. There might be a vexillarius, someone who holds the standard for the cavalry, the vexillum. A tesserarius, someone responsible for passwords. And there would be various instructors, discanes, adjutants, helpers, assistants like optios, etc. Now, promotion was one thing some people asked me about. Come back to it again here. So the military was hierarchical. It was hierarchical when it was the Republican area. It was very hierarchical in the late Empire. It's hierarchical in the early and high Empire. So there were a set of different ranks, and people have gone to a lot of trouble. Domazuski wrote this book in German in the early 20th century. This using inscriptions really informed a lot of what we know about the ranks and technically promotion. So we know a fair bit about the hierarchy. How you move from one level to the other is a little more difficult. So we might know that people went through different ranks, but we may not necessarily know always how it happened, why it happened. Sometimes it might seem arbitrary, other times not. So it doesn't seem to have been, for much of its existence, a meritocratic thing, although this does seem to improve a bit into late antiquity. Some general points to answering these questions about possible promotion. Letters were possible, although individual effort did count. You could go back to Campbell. Here is a letter. We find it. Okay, so it reads, this is from a papyrus. I think this is one of the ones I might want you to look at for this time. But anyway, from Caranus in Egypt, dated to 107 CE, and it reads, Julius Apollinarius to Julius Sabinus, his dearest father, very many greetings. Before everything else, I pray for your good health, which is my wish because I revere you next to the gods. Things are fine with me. After Serapis escorted me safely, there's a gap, while others were breaking stones all day and doing other things, up until today I have suffered none of this. And in fact, I asked Claudius Severus, the governor, to appoint me as a clerk on his staff, and he said there is no vacancy. Nevertheless, in the meantime I shall appoint you as a clerk of the legion, with the expectation of advancement. With this appointment I went from the governor and commander of the legion to the senior clerk. So if you love me, make every effort to write to me immediately about your health, and if you're concerned about me, and send some linen, clothing through Sempronius, etc. So here we get an instance of someone working to be promoted, possibly through his own initiative. Okay. I have mentioned, I think, before, but it's worth saying again, at least in terms of the early and high empire, that things get more complicated in late antiquity. If centurions are this famous sort of sergeant-like thing, and it represents the top of the non-commissioned officers, to use a modern, slightly anachronistic term. So non-commissioned officer, you might start off as a lowly recruit, like say our friend Roman legionary Bob. Bob, actually maybe this is Bob, is more normal legionary, then he becomes this. So Bob might start as a recruit, and over many years, it's possible he'd become a centurion. But as I've said before, that's probably as high as he could get. Now, if you are from a higher class, a higher socioeconomic class, it's possible you could start off in the centurionate and then possibly move higher. But really, your class goes a long way. To become a centurion, it might take 12, 15 years. We don't know. Promotion might also mean transfer to different legions. But it's also the case that it doesn't also, based on what evidence we have, it doesn't also seem to have been like you think of a lot of businesses and companies, whatever, today, if you pass criteria A, B, C, then you are eligible for promotion and whatever. And if you meet them, you'll move on or whatever. It doesn't seem to have been clear cut, even if we know a lot about some of the processes. So to give you another example, this is one guy who seems to have done amazing things. Down here, number 42 in Campbell, a Tiberius Claudius Maximus, a veteran. He served as a cavalryman and various other things. He was promoted to double pay in Exilia. He served bravely in the military, but he only seems to have gotten so far. Maybe not as well as we would have think, given all his service. Okay. One final thing to note for this video. Okay. There were other kinds of officials in the military. So you have your regular soldiers. Some of them might get those honorary ranks. Some of them might be standard bearers, etc. Maybe you could work your way up in 12 to 15 years to be a centurion. But there are other kinds of officials. That's the point. Some were involved in engineering. There were medical officials connected with the military. There were religious officials too. So the military wasn't just soldiers. There were administrative people, the clerks, as we saw in that one letter, Coranus. And then there were, music and security. So it was a whole range of positions in the military. Some of these you could take up after you enlisted.